Hey folks, I'm Tim Koval, and this is Gumshoe Stories. We're back with another podcast about the Missy Bevers case. If this is your first time watching a Gumshoe Stories podcast, the Missy Bevers case is our focus. Unlike a lot of true crime podcasts out there that feature a different case every time, we take a deep dive into one case, the murder of Missy Bevers. We do that because this case has really been underpublicized, in my opinion. So by focusing on just this case, it's my hope to be able to raise awareness of what happened, to keep the public talking about it, to generate maybe some tips that will help, hopefully, eventually lead to this case being solved. Now, before we get into today's podcast, I do want to just briefly mention something that was in the news today that I found out literally just a few hours ago that to me is a sad thing and something that I wanted to mention. Alex Trebek, the host of Jeopardy, died today as of the day that I'm recording this podcast, and just wanted to say that, and I know I'm not alone in this, Alex Trebek was a very integral, important part of my growing up years. I wasn't addicted to Jeopardy, but definitely watched it a lot, and I feel like I know Alex just because of the many years that we have been together. He's been in my living room, not personally, but definitely on my television, and just was always impressed with his intelligence, his sense of humor, the dignity with which he carried himself, and his, like I said, his sense of humor, and he just seemed to have a strength of character and a lot of courage in dealing with this pancreatic cancer. And so it saddens me that he's gone. And if you guys want to say something in the comments on this podcast about what Alex Trebek meant to you, or maybe some favorite memory of the show, or maybe you met him at one point in your life, then please share it in the comments. But I just want to say, rest in peace and in power, Alex Trebek. You will be missed. Now, I'm excited about today's podcast and what we're going to talk about because it goes a long way toward clearing up one of the enduring mysteries of the case. But before getting into it, let me just say that if this is your first time learning about the Missy Bevers case, you should really do a little research before listening further. Because in my podcast, I assume that you already know the basics, the who, the what, the when, the where, at least. So if you're new, put this podcast on pause and maybe go to gumshoestories.com and read my blog entry called An Overview of the Missy Bevers Murder. That should get you up to speed pretty quickly. There's also several previous podcasts going back the past 3 years or so. Feel free to listen to those as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into what I wanted to talk about today, which is to discuss exactly how it was that Missy and her camp participants got into the church as part of their regular routine. And then particularly, how did that work on the morning of the murder specifically? How did they get in? How did she unlock the door and get in? And then how did the people who came behind her, what was the mechanism by which they got in? Because it turns out it's a little more complicated than just opening a door. Well, there's been a lot of confusion and mystery and some incorrect assumptions, perhaps, surrounding how certain events happened that morning. We've managed over time to gradually learn some critical information that has helped to make some sense of why certain things happened in the sequence that they happened. Like, why was the class indoors when it was normally outdoors? Why would one camper arrive around 4:30 and just wait around rather than going inside? If the door was locked, then how did anybody get in at 5 a.m. when we know that they did enter the church despite not having Missy's keys? You might ask yourself, why do the answers to these questions even matter? Missy was already dead in the church. Why do we care about the specifics of how people got into the church? Well, my belief is that the more we know, then the more complete and accurate information we have about a case that really hasn't given us a lot of information. And so when we don't know what we don't know, it's not wise to assume that certain pieces of information are not important or that they don't matter. Police themselves have said one piece of seemingly insignificant data could end up being the one thing that unlocks the whole case. So with that said, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Very quickly, here are some things that we know. Missy Bevers pulled into the church and parked her truck under the southwest awning at 4:16 a.m. Police were able to confirm this with timestamp video. She briefly unloaded some equipment, then she unlocked the awning entrance with her key, and then we know from the CSI report that she opened the tailgate and she left her keys on the tailgate, and at 4:18 a.m. she entered the church. This is again something that police have confirmed through video. She entered at 4:18. Although the attack was not captured on video, police do believe that Missy was dead or dying within just a few minutes of entering the church, possibly by 4:20. Okay, a camper, the first camper of that morning, arrives at 4:35, according to the most recent warrant. And he was a male, waits under the awning. We've discussed him a little bit in the past. People referred to him for a long time as the early arriving camper. They also stated, incorrectly, that he waited in his car. This led to a lot of speculation as to why would you arrive 25 minutes early for such an early class at 5 a.m. and then sit in your car. And that led some to speculate that, well, maybe this camper was actually the killer, trying to blend in afterwards and catch people unawares, kind of like Kaiser Soze, if you ever saw the movie The Usual Suspects. But the truth we later learned was that this camper was not early at all. He was actually just a wee bit late for a 4:30 a.m. early bird workout. Missy already had two campers who liked to start at 4:30 instead of 5, and Missy would accommodate them because she's Missy. That's why she would get there a little bit after 4. So you had two female campers. I'm going to call them early bird number 1 and early bird number 2. Missy had texted both of them the night before that she had a new early bird camper who was going to join them at 4:30 the next morning. It was going to be his very first time as a CG camper. He was male and about 6'7", and she wanted to let her two female early birds know about him so that they wouldn't be scared. So we're going to call this male camper early bird number 3. If you've been following our discussions, you know that we gradually learned that early bird number 1 skipped that morning's workout because of the rain, and early bird number 2 had a flat tire 1 mile up the road from the church. So when early bird number 3 got to the church, he was the only one there besides Missy. And he did not wait in his car. According to the most recent search warrant from January of 2019, he is seen on video at 4:35 waiting under the awning. And he waited for almost 30 minutes. And we know from what early bird number 2 has told me that he did try to call Missy on her cell phone, but obviously at that point she's not answering the phone because she is deceased. So he's waiting around under the awning trying to figure out what's going on and waiting for others to show up. Other campers did show up a little bit prior to 5, and they were there for the 5 a.m. workout, so nothing was out of the ordinary to them. But why did early bird number 3 not go into the church? Missy was obviously inside. Her truck was under the awning. Passenger door was standing open. She wasn't in the truck. Why didn't he go in and look for her? Because it was time for his early bird workout to start. Well, the answer to that question is he could not get in. Over the past year or so, I've had the opportunity to talk to early bird number 1 and early bird number 2. And keep in mind, these two people are not friends. They've not spoken to one another, in fact, in more than 4.5 years, since before the murder. There were no more CG workouts after that murder occurred for obvious reasons, and so they've never spoken since it happened. And yet, in individual conversations that I had with each of them confirmed, independent of one another, that there was a certain trick to opening that door. And by that door, I'm talking about the door at the awning entrance where Missy entered. The first thing I'm going to tell you is what early bird number 1 told me. Remember, she's the person who skipped the class that day, so she wasn't there actually the morning of the murder, but she had been attending several days a week for 4.5 months and was familiar with how you access that door. And here's what she told me word for word. She said, and I quote, "You had to twist a knob, I think, while opening. I know it just didn't open by the handle. You have to know how to open the door to the church. There was like a button/lever, and then she had in quotes, under handle. You had to push to get in while opening the door at the same time. Okay, so keep that in your mind that she said there's a button/lever, and then she said under handle. So then I talked to early bird number 2. I told her that it was my understanding that there was a trick to getting in the door, and that early bird number 3 could not get in because of that. I asked if that was true. What early bird number 2 told me is, quote, yes, it's true. You have to push the button on the door, then turn the handle to the side at the same time. We had to push the button to open after it was unlocked. He, meaning early bird camper number 3, wouldn't have known that. So that was what was told to me by 2 people who had gone to CG at that church multiple times over a number of months. And their stories matched up pretty well. One called the mechanism a button/lever. The other just called it a button. One said the button or lever was under the handle. The other said the button was on the door. But they were in agreement that Missy unlocked the door, but you still could not just open the door after she unlocked it, that there was still an extra step, some sort of mechanism required to get the door to open, that existing campers knew how to do, but a new camper would not have known. Okay, so for me, this explained a lot. It explains why early bird number 3 waited under the awning and did not go inside through a door Missy had already unlocked. It also explains why the 5 a.m. campers were able to get into the church at 5 without breaking in. And we know that neither the awning door nor the west main entrance door were breached or broken into in any way. Okay, so after learning all that, I shared it in blogs and in some posts in Facebook groups that are dedicated to the Missy Bevers case, and wanting others to have that same knowledge, because to me it allows us to conclude some things about the suspect if we know about that mechanism of the door and how it worked. And I'll explain what conclusions I think we might be able to reach about the suspect a little bit later in this podcast. But there are a couple of people who, like me, have followed the case since the beginning and have made public comments about it. And these people kind of challenged me on the information about the door and how it worked. They repeatedly questioned why a door would be set up to work that way, that they had never seen a door that worked that way, that would require an extra step after unlocking. And since they had never seen such a thing and would not believe that there could be a purpose for it, it must not exist. They went so far as to refer to it sarcastically as the magic button. They said they talked to a man who was the contractor who built the church and installed the doors, and that he said the only button he knew of was an intercom button on the wall that you push to talk to someone in the office. They said that they talked to a woman named Ann at the church who is an employee who said she's worked there for 6 years and there's no button. So these 2 individuals publicly stated, mystery solved and there's no button, despite the eyewitness statements of 2 campers. So my question to them was, okay, let's just say you're right. Let's say there's no button. How do you explain the campers getting into the church at 5 a.m.? We know they didn't breach the awning doors or the west entrance doors. They didn't break in. They just walked through a door. So how do you explain that early bird 3 could not get in, but the 5 a.m. campers could, while Missy's keys lay untouched on her tailgate? Well, these individuals said, well, Missy must have given an extra key to another camper because that's the only thing that makes sense. Well, first, there's 0 evidence of anybody having a key besides Missy. So that's just kind of being made up from whole cloth to say, well, another camper had a key. So I'm not sure why that makes sense to these people when the testimony of 2 actual campers doesn't make sense to them. And secondly, that would be a serious breach of security for Missy to duplicate a key and give it to any camper. The church trusted Missy. They knew her. They gave her a key and the responsibility that goes with that. Just like the Midlothian Convention Center. She also had that as a workout location at 9 a.m. on certain days, and I think a few other times as well. The Midlothian Convention Center had also entrusted her with a key. Those places would not be okay with some camper that they didn't know, that they didn't sign up for that person having the keys to the kingdom, being able to just go anywhere in that building. That just wouldn't happen. What's more, let's see. Sorry, let me get to my questions here. Okay, so at this point, I would like to go ahead and share the exact way that the door actually did work. Okay, I have photographic evidence that backs this up. If you want to pause this and go to gumshoestories.com, you'll be able to see it. I've got a close-up photo of the actual Creekside door. I also have a new blog entry with the picture on that site. So if you go there right now and you don't see it, it's just because I haven't gotten to it yet, but it will be there. Okay, but if you don't want to go there, I'm going to kind of describe it to you and give you a word picture of what it is like. Okay, the awning entrance is double doors. There's a door on the left, there's a door on the right. Those doors have handles that are known as door pulls. A door pull is a handle that doesn't have any mechanical parts to it. You literally just grab hold of it and pull. And if the door's unlocked, then the door pulls out towards you. But it doesn't twist, it doesn't turn, it doesn't latch or unlatch. There's nothing on it except for just the handle. Okay, so 2 doors, 2 door pulls. Above the door pull of the door that's on the right, there is the lock mechanism. It's right there above the door pull. Not on the handle, it's on the door itself. Now you guys have probably seen deadbolts before, right? The keyed part of a deadbolt is usually a round shape, and then you have your keyhole in the center of that you physically insert your key into. So on the right door at Creekside, above the door pull, there is that round shape with a keyhole, like it looks like a deadbolt. This is where Missy would insert her key and unlock the door. Now, here's the trick part, okay? Underneath the keyhole is a lever that's kind of pointed north-south, up-down. Let's go back to my deadbolt reference. At your house, if you have a deadbolt, then usually the keyhole, the round part with the keyhole, is on the outside-facing part of the door, and on the inside-facing part of the door, you might have another keyhole, maybe. I've had one like that before. It's a pain because you're safe and secure in your home and you just want to go fasten your deadbolt, but in order to do so, you have to go find your key and insert it into the deadbolt to lock it. I hated it when I had one like that. But what's more common and a lot more convenient is what is called a thumb turn. This is a lever that when you put your thumb and your index finger on it and turn, it engages the deadbolt. So that way you don't have to worry about having your key when you're on the inside of your house. You just turn that thumb turn. Well, interestingly enough, Creekside has a thumb turn lever on the outside facing part of the door, directly underneath the keyhole. On my website, as I said before, I'm going to have up-close photos of that mechanism and a short video showing how the thumb turn works. But in reaching out to get information from a locksmith source, they said that the thumb turn functions as what is called a dead latch, meaning with Missy having unlocked the door first with her key, that's the necessary first step, but once she's done that, the next person behind her twists the thumb turn, it opens the door, and when they go in and the door closes behind them, it goes back to its latched state. So the next person that comes along also has to twist the thumb turn, as well as each person that comes along after them. Every time the door closes, it latches again. So that's exactly how it worked for Missy's campers. Now, these couple of people who have wanted to persist in challenging me on this, they're probably now going to come back with, well, you said it was a button, now you're saying it's a lever. It doesn't matter, okay? It was never about what the device looked like. It didn't matter if it was a button or a lever or a widget or a whatchamacallit. The point was, there's a 2-step process for getting into that awning entrance. Step 1 was Missy physically inserting a key. Step 2 was a mechanism that the camper had to know how to do. Otherwise, the door would appear to be locked if they only pulled on the handle. I used the term button as I researched this because the two campers used that term. One said button or lever, the other said button. Obviously, the one who said it was under the handle was incorrect, but hey, let's give these campers a little leeway. They were asked to go back 4 years in their memories, and that memory is painful and sad, but they got the big picture right. It just turned out that it's a lever and not a button, and that it's on the door and not under the handle. As for why the church would do a door that way, I can't say for sure. Maybe the contractor installed the door that way and the church only found out about it after it was already, installed and not part of the planning of it. But how this thumb turn could be useful, there's one way I can think of, is this. You lead a women's Bible study Tuesday nights at 7. As the leader, you get there early to set up, make coffee, do whatever. You unlock the door. Okay, if it's just a normal door, you're either going to have to stand there while people arrive one by one and let them in, or you just unlock the door completely and then you go to the other side of the church to your classroom, and then anybody and everybody can walk through the door. And there's the chance that somebody's going to walk through that you don't want to walk through, somebody off the street. So it's kind of an extra level of security to have this thumb turn. That's the best thing I can think of. It was complicated enough that it fooled early bird camper number 3, right? So if it's going to fool him, it's going to fool some other people as well. The main thing is that you've got kind of an extra measure of security, so that the people that are supposed to be there can easily go in, and someone who maybe has no business being there and has never been there before is not going to know how to get in. All right, so I hope this helps to understand how the door worked for the couple of people who challenged me on this. I don't really care about being right about it. This isn't my information. It never was. It was the information of 2 campers as told to me. And they were there repetitively for many months. So I don't care whether you believe me or not. I trust my sources. So let's close with asking ourselves, what can we take away from this discussion? Well, to me, the door mechanism reinforces the likelihood that the killer of Missy Bevers was not a camper and was not that familiar with the church. When you think about it, if you were a camper, you would know how that door worked because all the campers did. If you were there to target Missy, why would you do the things that they did? Going over to the north side, the opposite side of the church, breaking glass, prying into the service door, breaking windows in order to potentially test for an alarm. If you had familiarity with the location, you'd probably know whether it had an alarm or not already, all right? And if you'd been a camper, you would know how the door worked. So why not just hide out in the shrubbery near the entrance? And then enter while she's unlocking the door, or just as she goes inside, and attack her from behind and kill her. That would eliminate all the breaking and entering. If your conclusion or comeback to that is, well, he wanted to stage it as a burglary first. Well, no one believes that it was a burglary, do they? So if that was his intent, he sure did a poor job of it. So to summarize, and then I'll let you go, the awning entrance has a unique way of entering. Not only do you have the traditional step of inserting and turning a key, you also have a thumb turn or lever that must be done before the door will open. Missy did the first step. The first camper didn't know about the thumb turn, being new, so the campers who arrived later were the ones who were able to enter at 5 a.m. using the thumb turn. And in my mind, the actions that the killer took to break in on the north side and break windows and all that suggest that they were not a camper nor familiar with the church, because there was a much easier way to catch Missy unawares than to do what they did. So that's it. Thanks for watching and listening. Check out gumshoestories.com and see the photos of the door if you want to take a look at it. If you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so. That way you can be notified when I post new content. Until next time, stay safe and be nice to each other.